We asked Ned, who is the founder of a company called eBrevia, because he is an entrepreneur that I've known since the very beginning of when he started in Connecticut. And I always tell the story about Ned. I'm sorry to embarrass you, but so it must be 2 years, right, that you moved into the Stanford Innovation Center?
Yeah.
And so he'll tell you a little bit about his company, but it was originally just him and his co-founder, sort of part-time. And for the past, and so they started, and they would bring their lunch, really Ned would bring his lunch every single day. So, and he never buys lunch, he brings his lunch, he brings his grapes for a snack. And so, and he co-works. He doesn't rent office space, he co-works. And then he adds an employee, and they co-work, and they bring their lunch. And they all do that, and now are you up to 11 employees?
We will be soon. So we're going to close on another round of financing probably the end of this month.
And the moral of the story that Ned is doing what everybody has to do, which is really cutting costs, right? And doing it in the least expensive runway possible to really cut costs and keep his burn rate low. And it's such an impressive thing to see him build a company like that. So that's my one story about Ned. And now we can talk about what you do with eBrevia. What does eBrevia do? That would be good to know.
Sure. Well, fortunately, that's not the most embarrassing story about me. So.
I'll get to another one.
You had me nervous there for a second. But Janice is right. We are, as one of our private investors says, a very capital efficient company. And I think that's just one point I'll kind of mention off the bat is it's really amazing these days how far you can get with a very finite amount of financing. So our software is hosted on Amazon Web Services, and as we need additional servers, we can ramp them up. We were getting a whiteboard animation video done recently, and we're getting quotes for $5,000 to $10,000 for the video, and found someone through Elance that did it for $435. So there's a lot of savings you can find out there.
It's a great video too. I love that video that you did, right? That's all it cost was $435.
Yeah.
So so that's another lesson learned, and those resources do exist, and you can use that instead of paying $4,000 to $5,000. Tell everybody what eBrevia does.
Sure. So eBrevia is kind of a classic case of an entrepreneur feeling the pain and then looking for a solution themselves. So I'm a corporate attorney by training, and a lot of what I had done, particularly when I was a junior associate, was this process called conducting due diligence and mergers and acquisitions, where you have teams of junior attorneys going into these virtual data rooms and going through all the target companies' contracts to summarize their content and look for problematic provisions. And it was a process that was very time-consuming, very expensive, with these attorneys billing out at $300 to $500 an hour. And it was also prone to mistakes. If you think about a junior attorney scanning this computer screen at 3 in the morning, going through complex documents, it was really easy to miss things. So one of my co-founders and I, who had a similar experience as an attorney, thought there might be some artificial intelligence technology out there that we could apply to this issue and help attorneys work more accurately and efficiently. So we started looking at different technologies from a variety of universities. We found this really cool technology at Columbia University that they successfully spun out for other applications in other industries, and sponsored some research there to tweak it and fit this legal application we were contemplating. So essentially it's a software tool that helps attorneys, as I said, review contracts more accurately and efficiently and cost effectively.
And so the other thing is you chose to build your company in Connecticut. And that's another story about that I really like. Tell us why you chose it.
Yeah, so there's actually a few reasons. So we're based in Stanford at the Stanford Innovation Center, and it's an ideal location for a lot of reasons. One, I think the entrepreneurial ecosystem here is a little bit smaller, so it's very easy to get familiar with the players. We're also a short 45-minute train ride from Manhattan, which is obviously a legal epicenter and where a lot of our clients are. It has a deep talent pool, particularly I think on the business side. And some of the overhead costs are lower too, which, as Janice said, kind of fits into my business model.
Another thing that I've watched Ned do over the past couple of years is really take advantage of different funding sources, both private and public. And so I know that you did this once before, but can you take us through all of the funding from the $10,000 voucher to whatever else funding you got from the very get-go? I think that's a good story.
Yeah, sure. So we're very scrappy about funding. We apply for everything. And we started the company, so my co-founder and I each invested $25,000 to sponsor this research at Columbia. And that got us to a prototype and the exclusive licensee of Columbia's IP. And then we spun the company out at the university in early 2012. And we're fortunate because just at that time, Connecticut Innovations had started this TechStart Fund program, which was helping very, very early stage companies. Just it was kind of a mentoring program. It was 10 weeks to take their concept and kind of get out of the building, show it to folks, and get feedback. But as part of that program, we received a $25,000 note, and that program culminated with a demo pitch. We were looking to raise $400,000 to complete product development, and we ended up closing on just a little bit over 400 at 425. So a lot of that was from private investors. Connecticut Innovations participated with their standard VC convertible note for $150,000. And then since then, we came across a number of grant opportunities. So we took advantage of a $30,000 grant through the Small Business Incubator Program, which is administered by CCAP. And we were eligible for that because we were members of the Stanford Innovation Center. We used that to actually hire, as a contractor, one of our contract attorneys who annotates documents for the software to learn from. And then he subsequently joined us as a full-time employee. We took advantage of an innovation voucher for $10,000, which we used to hire a design firm in New Haven to help put together our user interface. We received a $10,000 Entrepreneur Innovation Award, which we used to, we're actually still using to create some features directly in response to user feedback. So these are additional suggestions we've got from users. We received a $25,000 Technology Talent Bridge grant. And these were used to hire a few interns to assist over the summer. One of those actually just joined us as a full-time employee as well. And we received a $100,000 Small Business Express Program grant, and that we're in the process of using to ramp up with additional employees. And we actually, over this summer, started to look to raise our next round of financing. It was much easier to fill than the first round. Just in terms of the timing, we filled it in probably about 6 weeks or so. It's a $1 million round, so we'll close at $1 million plus, probably around the end of September.
Sounds great. So all of those programs that Ned talked about, both the public programs, all exist, and all of you are potentially eligible if you're in Connecticut. Tonight at the networking, some of the Connecticut Innovation CT Next people will be there. You'll get to meet them. You can talk about the EIA, which I think Candace is also one of those as well. And we'll invite Sheila Hummel, who runs the Small Business Express program, to the final night also. She's wonderful. Jen and I have worked with her in a couple of companies successfully. So we'll make sure that you expose the one. The CCAT grant is probably the tougher one. It takes about a year, but you need to be in what's called a Connecticut incubator, of which there are about 4 or 5 throughout the state. So Stanford Innovation can actually be there, but you have to be there for a year in order to be eligible for the grant, right?
Not when we apply.
Oh, right.
So,
But
yeah,
did it take you a year for the
it did take
application?
over a year. Yeah, to apply, you just had to be a resident.
Right.
The issue we've had is when people have applied when they're not actually working in a place but sort of promised to be.
Right.
And then we get asked and we say,
Yeah.
no, they're not actually.
Right, we're in here. So,
That I see all the time, I'm pretty sure.
yeah, I'm pretty sure Ned's there.
So that just, it's a screaming question in my mind. How do you have the time? I don't know how many people are working in your organization.
I think it's turned on.
Oh, I'm sorry. How do you have the time to be researching all of these grants, yet let alone the hoops you have to go through to get the grants, as well as talking to someone on Elance to get the great video as opposed to the 4,000 and grow your customer base and your business? I mean, do you have a dedicated staff member who does that?
Yeah, I mean, it is a challenge, I think. I mean, there's so many finite resources in being an entrepreneur, but I do think time is the biggest one. And it's, you know, in terms of the grants, I mean, like I said, Connecticut is a fairly small ecosystem. I think those are all of the grants out there, to my knowledge. If there's others, let me know. I'll start applying this evening, but, so yeah, I mean, you know, and this is, I think, kind of where having good co-founders is helpful. So one of my co-founders actually, on most of the grants, has kind of taken the lead. Many of the applications aren't that extensive. So I think certainly the SBIP grant for $30,000, the two $10,000 grants weren't that extensive. The $100,000, there's obviously more involved in that. But yeah, it's, you know, and even he was just kind of delegating duties. So he had an independent contractor that was kind of helping him and just managing some of these processes, because you're right, there's a tremendous amount of work to do.
Yeah.
We do, you know, I do have a listing that I put together at one point of all the grants. What happens though sometimes is that they change in terms of who's eligible, what the eligibility criteria is. You know, the other advantage that Ned has had is that he's a technology company. So for pre-seed, that is, they invest in disruptive technologies. And so that becomes sort of limiting in terms of what they're investing in the pre-seed. The EIA is more, not so much just the technology. The Small Business Express program grant and loan is consumer product goods. It's open to anybody. Jen and I have worked with several companies successfully who got the maximum. Carissa Ganelli, lightning by, who you'll meet if you go to the Connecticut event at UConn next Friday. She's on one of the panels. Was one of the first early ventures that I helped to get a $100,000 grant and a $250,000 loan through that program almost 2 years ago. So, so the money is there. It's got criteria that's specific, and sometimes technology companies have a bit of an advantage. Yeah.
But you have to have your financials
Yeah.
planned. You have to have a good pitch deck.
Yeah.
And other than that, though, the one, you know, and then you have to know your audience, because certain, as Janice says, some things are only open to certain, are targeted. But you have to have those two things done. And then the applications themselves, I don't think are that rigorous.
Right. And most of the grants are around building employees and hiring employees. So that's the other piece of it, is that's where the grants are. And loans always need revenue, because they're assuming that you could be able to pay it back, and so the loan always needs some revenue.
And one thing I'll mention too, once you get one of the grant applications written, it makes the other applications much easier. It's kind of copy and pasting, tweaking. So
what advice would you give our entrepreneurs as they begin their potential funding journey in Connecticut?
Yeah. So I think, you know, one thing I'll say is, all the advice you get, I definitely take it with a grain of salt, and you know, certainly my experience as well. I think you'll find you get conflicting advice from a lot of very smart people, and as the entrepreneur, you always have to kind of make that judgment call yourself. But just in general, I mean, I think one thing that was a little surprising to me is how iterative the process is. So you'll find that everything is constantly, you throw something out there, you get some feedback, you're constantly improving it, and that'll be your pitch and your product and your website and your business model. So I would just be always open to that. And then I think in the times where it's kind of judgment calls that could go either way, we tend to err to the side of action. So if you're debating whether or not to do something, we typically will just do it and see what happens.
It's actually really great advice. I think that's really good advice. Other questions? Renee? Leonora has one. Can you?
Sure. So I'm curious about the license of your technology. How do you feel that's going to impact an exit for you?
Yeah, so it's actually, we have a really good relationship with Columbia, and the way the license is set up is we're the exclusive licensee in the legal and compliance field of their related intellectual property. So as a result, kind of what they receive out of the relationship. We are a Columbia portfolio company, so they own a small piece of equity in eBrevia, kind of low single digits. And we also pay a 2% royalty based on products or services related to their technology. But it's a perpetual license, and like I said, it is exclusive. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, a lot of investors have been excited about that and see that as a real asset for the company. And my sense is that probably holds true on the exit as well. So yeah, we haven't gotten much pushback or kind of negativity with respect to the license. The nice thing about it from a product development perspective is it's really allowed us to leverage technology that we otherwise never would have been able to create ourselves. I mean, Columbia's been focused on this area with government grants and other sources of funding for a long time, and they've successfully spun out, as I mentioned, other companies in other industries. There's a company out in San Francisco that's using similar technology to analyze and summarize news content. They've done it on medical journals and technical journals, and legal documents are actually, just by the way they're structured, fairly conducive to this type of machine learning technology.
So Ned, what's next in your journey here? I mean, so you're a beta, right?
Yep.
And so what's next? What do you need to do?
Yeah, so with this next round of funding, we're going to be ramping up both on the business and technical side. Most of our beta customers are now in more of a pilot program, so we're looking to convert them to paying customers. These are folks in both law firms and in-house legal departments. Will also be, that's for our first product, which is this Diligence Accelerator product. Other products we're in the process of rolling out include a contract manager product, and then some products in very specific verticals as well that we've gotten requests for. So it's an exciting time. I mean, I think over the next few months throughout the fall, there's going to be a lot of interviewing and a lot of hiring, and then just continuing to ramp up from there.
So did you quit your job to do this?
Well, I quit my job to become an entrepreneur. Yes, that's correct. That's correct. We'll find out if it paid off.
It's funny because
It's much more fun doing this.
Ned and I first met, we met in Manhattan after the New York Tech meetup, and he was working on, it was an automotive something.
That's right.
And then you turned up again later with the legal thing.
That's right. That's right.
I think that's one of the things that people, it's sort of exciting when you sort of realize this, is deciding to be an entrepreneur is one decision, and deciding on the product or service or business you want to build, that's actually a separate decision. And if you treat it that way, you can sort of maintain your sanity. Like, it's not all tied to, I mean, eBrevia, I think is a great trajectory, but I have a feeling that once it's done, you're probably going to want to do something else.
Yeah, I think that's right. I don't think I want to go back to practicing corporate law again, so we'll see.
Have you looked at using this for Dodd-Frank?
Yeah, that's really interesting. So it is a machine learning technology, so it's pretty adaptable, and really adjusting it to a new legal domain just requires training it on examples from that domain.
Right.
So yeah, I think that could be a great application for the technology.
Because I did a lot of work with investment banks, and they're spending so much more money now on compliance and operational risk than they are even on front office, because they're now finally on the hook for tens of billions. And so you've got companies like Mantis, you have a couple of the big derivatives firms. There could be some really significant licensing opportunities. And then with PwC, those firms are charging $250 an hour or more just to have people look at things like workflow within Dodd-Frank approvals. So, I mean, that's a monster market that you could be tapping into, because these banks are spending money like drunken sailors just to mitigate their own risk. Jamie Dimon does not want to be called in front of Congress again.
Sure.
So.
Yeah, it's a great idea.
So, I mean, I'm happy to talk to you and see. I know a lot of folks that are in and around this space. Some of them are technical, and it could be an opportunity for you to kind of build out a new product as well as the implementation practice.
Yeah, that sounds great. Appreciate it.
Any other questions? Candace? Oh, wait, before we go there, Dennis, don't leave. Are you going someplace else? This is Dennis. I think you came in the room, but you didn't know you were coming here. This is Dennis Wan, who's the president of the Westport Sunrise Rotary, and we want to thank him for the $2,500 grant. So it's the kickoff day. update for the refinery, and so our accelerator program. And so we mentioned your sponsorship earlier in the day, so thank you very much for your support.
Oh, it's our pleasure. And I thank Janice, who's a member of our club, and I think we support all these economic development initiatives along with other service organizations, and so we're very happy that this is going on.
Right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Dennis. Thanks. Candace had a question. So where's our little?
Here.
Quick question. So where do you see your company going from here, and what do you see as your end point in your trajectory with this particular company?
Yeah, so I think, right now we're focused on this diligence accelerator product primarily and starting to get into more of an in-house application, which is a contract manager product. But I think it's just continuing to expand, both, in specific verticals and then just within our customer base. I think an exit event, my sense is we'd shoot for maybe 5 years or so. It could come earlier than that, but if it did, it would probably be at a lower amount. My sense is it would probably be an exit in the form of an acquisition by a legal technology provider such as Westlaw or Bloomberg Law, a virtual data room, maybe an e-discovery company. There's also companies that are somewhat tangentially related to the space that provide services to law firms and in-house legal departments, so perhaps one of those as well.
So just talk a little bit about the exit strategy, because when you started this company, did you think about your exit strategy then and talk about it from the very beginning?
Yeah, I think we always thought it would be in the form of an acquisition, it's something that we kind of have in the back of our minds. We're certainly, we're excited about the company. We're not looking to just flip it in the next year or so. We really want to allow it to grow. But at the same time, I think our investors at some point will want to reap some returns. It's not something we emphasize a lot in our pitch, but we do typically have like one slide on it and pretty much just convey exactly what I told you.
So, and one of the other questions that came up earlier today, but before you came, was around financials. And so, you're an attorney, not a financial guy, but we were talking about the need for, in particular, women CEOs to really understand the financials and talk about financials. Can you do that?
I can at a high level. I do. I can express the financials articulately, answer some high-level questions about it. One of my co-founders, who's also an attorney by training, but a bit more of a financial guy, is the one who's focused more on the models. So if there's follow-up questions, really digging in deep, sometimes I defer to him. And I think it's the same on the technical side too. So I'm not a technologist. I've gotten to learn a little bit. I now know more about kind of machine learning technology than I ever thought I would. So I can answer many questions articulately, but if you're really a tech guy and you want to dig deep, most likely defer to our CTO on that.
So that was exactly the advice that Jean gave before, which was you need to know enough to be able to answer those questions and to talk through it, but if you get down too deep, then you can have that other person with you. But you can't just defer right off the bat, right, to the other person.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right.
Yeah, so she was right. Good. Anybody else?
Thank you. So as a lean company, mindful of the bottom line, how do you attract and retain staff and get them motivated, get them engaged? And at what point do you start thinking about, or are they pushing you on any kind of benefits?
Yeah. No, it is a great question. We've been fortunate, in terms of the folks that we've hired. I think it is still a very good market for hiring. So there's a lot of qualified people out there that are interested in startups. In terms of benefits, so our current employees, while we've been running very leanly, haven't, well, with the exception of one, haven't received benefits. But with this next round of financing, everyone will receive benefits.
Great.
Thank you.
Anything else? Ned, thank you so much. Wait, so where, I actually have one more, sorry, one more question. You are a tremendous resource because you've actually done so many little things on your, I mean, you've done it. It's not like you handed it off to somebody else, you didn't outsource it. Would you, if we have questions about, you know, how to get that video done, who's your contact, and would you be willing to just be that resource for us?
Yeah, definitely. I'd be happy to. And that's a good point. I mean, a lot of the connections we've made with other entrepreneurs have been extremely helpful. And there's just a lot of, I mean, we talked about time before. It's a way to save a ton of time, and that video is a good example. So, you know, we had some folks on our end that probably talked to, I don't know, maybe 25 different videographers throughout the world, and they selected this person, and they kind of vetted him. And I'd be happy to share his name and email with anyone that's interested.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you.